Hello, hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome once again to some sci fails for you here at Live from the Hive. Hopefully, you are ready for some some more bad animal science. So, over the last couple of months, there's been these videos that pop up in my feed about what animals are worse than or more terrible than the T-Rex or the Megalodon or the saber-toothed tiger or the giant short-faced bear. What animals could defeat them and all this stuff. And it gets really redundant and confusing. I covered the videos for a little bit, because they were fun, but it just got to the point where they were making the same arguments. But suddenly there's this new kid on the block. All these videos all of a sudden have a new contender in their, hey, this is the scariest animal that ever lived arguments. And I keep seeing this one. And usually they're animals that exist, right? But you tell me. This is why the red megalodon is 100 times more dangerous than the megalodon. Okay, a scene from like the Meg movies. Yeah. Now, Megalodon is something I've covered quite a bit on this show. Yeah, I think you guys, that's a South African accent. South Africa, which is like south of Britain. So it's like a Louisiana accent for English people. It's the South African accent that Mark Reed has. So yeah, I've covered, the Megalodon comes up all the time. I've covered the Megalodon lots. Probably you all probably get tired of me talking about the Megalodon, but
It's a shark. It's like 20, 25 meters.
It's a megalodon.
For those who might not be familiar with it, the megalodon is a huge prehistoric animal that dwells in the sea. Said to be multiple times larger than any sea creature known today, although it sadly went extinct many years ago. Despite the fact that it's
just say many years ago, the Megalodon went extinct like millions of years ago, 3.6 million years ago. You gonna play?
no longer with us, the megalodon's shadow continues to loom when it comes to aquatic animals. However, you might think that this mammoth of an animal would have been the king of the seas, but new discoveries have shown that there are even larger animals that could have easily dwarfed it in size and ferociousness. What are those animals? How long did they live? And what was their fate? Kick back and relax, because I've got all the details for you. Join us as we have a look at creatures that might have been much more dangerous than the megalodon. The baddest dudes in the sea. By any stretch of...
So this is one of these videos that they're going to go through and talk about it, like, oh, they're going to talk about Leviathan. They're going to talk about maybe Mosasaur, things like that, that were, potentially more of a impressive apex predator than Megalodon for whatever reason, or could best it in a battle or whatever. But the reason I'm here is for the Red Megalodon, son, so get on with it.
The megalodon was an incredibly large animal. Take this for context. Today, most of the sharks you see vary in size. Most of them can be anywhere between 5 to 7 feet long, while exceptional ones can be even bigger. The hammerhead ranges between 11 to 18 feet, while the great white shark
does. There's other smaller hammerheads that are much, much smaller than that average, like you said, 5 to 7 feet. A greater hammerhead is not the representative of all hammerheads. So the great white shark's not going to be representative of all mackerel sharks. It's literally the biggest and most predatory mackerel shark.
Easily hits that 20 feet mark. Still though, none of them could even touch the megalodon. During its time as an apex predator, the megalodon easily hit 60 feet in size. And here's the kicker. Some of them were even larger. Basically, the great white today would have been no larger than the megalodon's reproductive organs. Basically, while the massive Tyrannosaurus Rex was the king of the land, the megalodon...
So you're saying the megalodon's claspers were 20 feet long? I don't think that that's accurate at all. I think a clasper on a 46 to 60 foot shark are probably going to be maybe. It's going to depend a lot on the species. Can't think of any species that's going to have claspers that are like more than 20% of its body length, though. Those should be like, what, 10 feet, 11 feet, something like that. Not as big as a great white shark, though.
Was the undisputed king of the sea. And with such an incredible size, it's no small wonder that the megalodon was such a strong animal. According to some research, the big fish had quite the bite force pressure, around 40,000 pounds per square inch, and that's actually the largest bite force of any animal ever measured, living or extinct. And for comparison, the T-Rex had a bite force measuring 12,000 pounds per square inch, and while we humans only measure about 160 pounds per square inch ourselves. This incredible bite force complemented...
Most of the stuff that we bite into, you don't need even a fraction of that bite force, though. We used to eat a lot rougher stuff. We probably had a heavier bite force in the past. I know that when they do bite force tests on other apes, that they tend to have, especially ones that are folivores, like gorillas, and they will have an extremely powerful bite force. I know we don't have necessarily folivore ancestors, at least not anytime recently. Frugivores were mostly what our ancestors were, more like chimpanzees than gorillas. More like chimpanzees or orangutans. Obviously less arboreal. We started eating meat though, which also having a good bite force to cut through it was reasonable, but we didn't have the knife teeth that other carnivores had, so eventually we started cooking our food, and so we didn't need the bite force anymore. But yeah, cooking does, so you lose some nutrients that way for sure.
Jaws that measured 9 to 11 feet in size, enough to swallow an average-sized human being in a single bite. Okay. So yes, the megalodon was undoubtedly not one to be messed around with. Now, considering its incredible size, it's no wonder that the megalodon used its influence and pretty much acted like the baddest one in the seas. No animal would be safe from
Why would you just, those are just that's pure assumption though, right? We don't know how the megalodon acted. We don't know what his behaviors were like other than what we can glean from existing sharks today.
Meg in prehistoric times. In fact, the fossil records have shown bite marks of the megalodon on some of the largest baleen whales in the period. It just goes to show that no creature...
Which were significantly smaller than the baleen whales we have today. Let's keep that in mind, too. Baleen whales really started to grow in size when the world really cooled down here during the Pleistocene. So the sharks and big things that lived in the ocean lived in a more tropical, warm waters. Megalodon was like a tropical shark, right? Lived in warm, shallow seas. And I mean, that's where we find their teeth at. That's kind of what we pick up on. The whales that lived during this time were many and varied. I'm not saying there weren't some that were quite large, but the largest whales that have ever existed got large as the world cooled down, as krill became a viable and almost and dominating food source in the ocean biomes, right? So it cools down and it gets cooler. They need to put on body fat, like as we used to have with seals as well. They develop blubber, and suddenly we got these gigantic aquatic animals, bigger than anything that we've ever seen before, filling this giant niche.
Creature, whether great or small, was even a match for this massive beast. In terms of hunting, however, megalodons and great white sharks were not necessarily on the same page.
Neither one of those is a great white. This is a lemon shark on the right, I believe. Let me make sure. See how I like when I'm not sure, I fact check myself, because I know I'm not a marine biologist, even though I'm good at identifying fish. So yeah, I'm thinking that's a lemon shark. If you disagree with me, you can tell me in the comments down below why you think this is not a lemon shark. But to me, very much looks like a lemon shark. Especially those cool eyes that they have. Look at that, and the cat-like eyes. Yeah, I think think that that's a lemon shark. Okay. Moving
Sharks were
on.
not necessarily on the same page. You see, even today, most of the great whites that you see are ambush hunters. They will stalk their prey, then catch them and draw them deeper into the ocean, where they then have a better chance of finishing the job. The Megalodon, however, would be much more aggressive. And of course, given its size, the Megalodon did not necessarily know how to be stealthy. Not that it really needed stealth. The animal was more into brute force than any other fish. The Megalodon's preferred diet would be large marine animals, and according to scientists, it would most likely take apart its prey in a systematic fashion.
So, when it comes to big predators like this, right? It's where you're talking about an ecological niche that doesn't exist today, right? This is the same as like you're talking about giant theropods like T-Rex and Giganotosaurus and things like that, and how they behaved and how they ambush their prey and things. It's very speculative because there's nothing today that would use those hunting strategies, because there's nothing that's that big that's carnivorous. All our largest land predators are not multiple tons. They're all less than 2 tons. Most of them are like 95% of land-based predators today are under 1 ton, right? And aquatic predators, like the biggest aquatic predators right now are orcas. Unless you want to talk about sperm whales being, but they're kind of feeding on much smaller things than, well, for the most part, because they eat like giant squid and sleeper sharks and stuff like that. But
Fashion, tearing its fins and tail before devouring it, and then, while great whites usually draw their prey under the ocean, the Megalodon would attack from underneath, tearing its prey wide open before taking it apart and feasting on its succulent meat. While the Megalodon was a pretty large and ruthless animal, most scientists claim that it didn't have overly strong bones. They believe that this, along with the natural
this is a shark, brah. It didn't have bones at all. It's a shark.
evolution of the world, must have been the reason why the Megalodon went extinct. However, it is worth noting that this might not have been the case. Most shark skeletons have a ton of cartilage, and although their connective tissues effectively disintegrate over time after they die, it could just be a case of not having enough fossil records to know the characteristics. Nevertheless, it seems
probably, but we can infer some data from we can infer some data from other sources.
Quite obvious that the
like modern sharks, the climate and things like that. We can
Megalodon was one insanely strong animal that was not to be messed with. And even though they all went extinct around 2.6 million years ago, their shadow still very much looms.
I am 5 minutes into, or almost 5 minutes into a 6-minute video about Red Megalodon, and you haven't told me what even the hell a Red Megalodon is.
Amongst the animals of the oceans today.
What's your deal?
Discerning the Megalodon sizes. Like many animals of the sea, the Megalodon were not homogeneous. You had different variations, with most of the classifications being based on size and stature. To kick things off, we have the gray Megalodon.
Size and stature. Is this like manosphere terminology? Finally, you're talking about the gray Megalodon, and we're going to talk about the gray Megalodon and the red Megalodon. Come on now.
These were usually the largest of the bunch, with bigger bodies and more ferocious appetites. These guys ate pretty much anything and would just as well show up on the scene and have everyone scamper away because they were so huge. Then we have the red Megalodon.
Okay.
They were not as large as the gray Megalodon, coming in at about 40 to 45 feet in length. However,
where do these exist? Where does this division exist between red Megalodon and gray Megalodon? Where are you getting this from? That there are these two classes of Megalodon. What about pink Megalodon? Where is blue Megalodon? And the green Megalodon? And then they can combine together and make the Megalodonazord or whatever. But where is evidence that any of them exist? Oh my gosh.
They were actually the more dangerous of the two, interestingly enough. And if you think about it like this, whatever type that it was, the Megalodon was probably the biggest animal in the seas. However, that same size is what made the gray megalodon such a formidable force to be reckoned with, and it was also one of its biggest disadvantages. Because these animals were so large, maneuvering in the ocean was quite the challenge, and hunting elusive and
I
fast
hear
prey
that a
would be
lot in these videos, right? About, oh, it was so big it couldn't have been an effective hunter. It's like, what? Yeah, this totally sounds like Chud astrology that is the manosphere, right? It does. Yeah, spent purple right with orange. Spent too much time near the surface and got sunburned. That'd be the red megalodon. Oh my Christ! What is Chud astrology, and do I want to know? It's a star chart of why women won't date them. They're not high quality, or she's too low quality, or she's over 35, so she's lost her value. All that bullshit. That's manosphere stuff. But it really does sound like their ranking and hierarchy and all this nonsense.
almost impossible.
All right, so that's part one. But I didn't realize that this was the same video as this. So we're gonna watch the rest of it on here.
In the murky depths of side of the jaw. And there we had it, the size of the great white megalodon. Double the size of a big school bus. And 3 times the size of a great white shark.
This isn't the same one. Let me see.
So what did it actually eat to make it
was
the
on here, though. These people with their red megalodon videos. Is the part 2 on here, maybe? Red megalodon. The first one will be part 2. TikTok's so weird. Sorry, all you kids.
To that effect, gray megalodons were mostly lazy and slow, and when they did eventually eat, it would mostly be animals that were very slow at evasion.
I want to make this bigger. How can I do
Or
that?
perhaps it would just simply bully another animal into eating its food. On the flip side, though, the red megalodon was much more agile and quick due to its smaller size. It was able
and the fact that it didn't exist. So it not only was it faster, more agile, we can give it other traits too. It also had torpedoes that launched right out of its fin. Just pew, pew, and they could take out anything. Used them to destroy T-Rex. That's actually why the dinosaurs went extinct, because red megalodon had torpedo fins. What the hell are you talking about? Makes sense of what you're saying. Show me evidence that this thing exists.
to move underwater easily, hide in almost plain sight, and even hunt some of the quickest and most elusive of prey. And if you want to know the real kicker, due to the disparities in size and speed, the red megalodon could actually snatch food from the mouth of a gray megalodon and run away. It's not like the big guy could give any chase now, is it? Combine this with the fact that red megalodons were still leaps and bounds bigger than most other animals.
So what they're talking about here sounds like niche partitioning between different age groups of megalodons during the period of time that they lived. That's not out of the question that they may have had some niche partitioning. These niches that they were filling would not have made this red megalodon and that gray megalodon. It just wouldn't have. They would have all still been megalodon. We do think, again, I hate to keep deferring back to giant theropods, but they also had different niches during different portions of their life, when they were, when they're juveniles to when they're young adults to when they're adults, and they have different strategies and different prey targets and different predators that could come along. Some of them may have been cannibalistic, but in sharks we see that today, that a baby great white's only this long. It's only a couple of, I think about 1.5 feet long, a newborn baby great white is. So the adult great white will eat that baby great white if it can, but if it can catch it. So yeah, this isn't out of the question in any way that there would have been multiple sizes of megalodons living in the same environment, but to call them red megalodon, I don't see any reason to give them this moniker. Where's this coming from?
Animals, and you'd see that the world was literally their oyster. Red megalodons had...
Hold on. The red megalodon is all about stoicism. Red megalodon doesn't need a mate. It chooses worthy female red megalodons. Oh, is that our well, this is the megalodonosphere. The farmers, the socks you wore more regularly, the more unclean you are. I'm not sure about that. Traveling near at the airport. Well, safe travels, Doc. That's Jay Bundy. Hunter Biden's laptops is Dr. Jay Bundy. And they're going to maybe they're looking for some different prospects for their future. So I wish you all the luck in the world on your journey. We'll keep things. We'll keep the candles burning and gather for you, my friend. You want me to do a lobster show? I did a video about lobsters a long time ago with actually a whole bunch of trans people. It was before I came out, but there was a whole bunch of trans people in it.
Teeth measuring about 8 inches in length, so hunting was never an issue in any sort of way. And another significant reason why the animals were so dangerous was that they had a herd mentality. According to scientists, red megalodons would usually gather and hunt in groups, taking advantage of the strength in numbers approach to overshadow their prey. And if you think about it,
where is the evidence for this? Are you saying this because we find bulk numbers of megalodon teeth? Because what that tells me is that there was a regular place that these animals gathered, probably for breeding or some other. Because like Chesapeake Bay is a place where we find a lot of megalodon teeth, right? Like a lot of them, so much so that it's like, but we can trace a chrono species through the fossil record for megalodon. Like we can trace them from one species to the other. We can trace the evolution of the species because there's so many teeth down in Chesapeake Bay. That doesn't mean the megalodons lived in packs. And that they lived in packs when they were juveniles and then went solitary. So, I mean, not saying that they didn't. We don't know. But this is just made up bullshit.
Red megalodon is already too much to handle if you're any kind of sea creature, but to have a bunch of them moving around and on the prowl would be a completely untenable situation that I would probably not even wish on my worst enemy. Now, of course, the sad part of the entire thing was that red megalodons also did not have so much food at the end of the day. Because they hunted in packs and pretty much scared the living daylights out of any other animal, they didn't have so much to eat. And so they lived mostly nomadic lives, moving across the great expanse of the oceans and never really having a...
That's just how the mackerel shark do. They're nomadic and they travel constantly. They actually have to, they don't have a choice in the matter. They have to keep moving. It's part of their anatomy. They got these gills that they have to keep pushing water against in order to stay alive. They can't not.
Place they could settle down in. All in all, it's safe to say that no animal that lived in the ocean wanted any smoke with these guys. The megalodon was a ferocious beast that had an incredible mixture of size and strength, and which would easily rip any other animal to shreds. They weren't scared of anyone, and pretty much all animals were fodder to them. If you were going to really go toe-to-toe...
There was probably a lot of, again, we've been over this a dozen times on this channel, there were probably a few species of whales that were outside of the usual prey of megalodon at the time and were also hyper predators, ginormous predators of other whales and big fish and probably sharks as well.
So with any of them, you had better be ready.
Yeah.
This was especially true for the red megalodon. Despite not being the largest of the bunch, the red megalodon was a menace in the ocean and was still pretty large. But it also had the advantage of being much faster and deadlier. This, as well as the animal's penchant for moving in packs and hunting as a collective, meant that no one was safe.
Where are you getting that information that it moved in packs and hunted? And where is this coming from?
From them. The moment you see a squad of red megalodons moving across the scene, you had better move out of the way. That is, before you become collateral damage as well. Even though they must have been insanely awesome, I think it is safe to say I'm happy that megalodons don't exist anymore. Having these guys as part of our
I don't think that they'd be too bad if they existed. And we wouldn't have to do anything different than we do with regular sharks. Actually, they'd probably be less interested in us than the sharks we have today because we wouldn't, it wouldn't be worthwhile to even try to hunt and catch a human.
Oceanic system today would be quite the lot to deal with all at once. The great titans of the sea. At this point, it should have become pretty obvious that the Megalodon was one of the scariest and most incredible masters of the sea. It was untouchable in its era.
And it did not live at the same time as the dinosaurs. So let's just wipe that out right now. No dinosaurs lived with Megalodon except for the avian dinosaurs, of course.
Pretty much ruled the oceans with an iron fist. However, it is worth noting that this was only a small part of the world's incredible history. And as different eras came and went, so did the animals that followed. The oceans have seen a great number of species come and go, and while we can all argue which was the biggest and baddest of them all, there have been some that have truly stood out of the pack over the millennia. And so, which other animals were so massive? The Leviathan.
All right, let's speculate on what they're going to cover here. We got 3 minutes, maybe 3.5 minutes, and they're going to cover some different big bads. I'm going to guess that we've already got Leviathan, but we all knew that was coming, right? That's always the answer to Megalodon is Leviathan. So I'm going to speculate Mosasaur, which I've already said. Mosasaur is going to be on here. And we're going to get probably maybe a Dunkleosteus. I doubt it, but maybe a Dunkleosteus. And a Basilosaurus. Some Basilosaurid.
If you've ever seen a list that ranks the largest and most dangerous of sea monsters of all time, and it doesn't include the Leviathan, then you should probably go ahead and bin it. This animal was so large that some even believed it to have been the greatest direct rival to the Megalodon. Both lived around the same period and had comparable sizes, so you can just imagine how explosive a conflict between them would have been.
And that's reasonable speculative paleontology, right? That is reasonable. But this idea that, oh, there are gray megalodons and red megalodons, and the gray megalodons were total alpha chads, but the red megalodons were sigmas, and what the fuck is this?
In any case, it's usually seen by many as the ancestor of the popular sperm whale. These animals lived millions of years ago, and they were as grand as they were terrifying. Now,
no, they're not an ancestor of the sperm whale. They are a cousin of the sperm whale. Megaphyster is a whole group with lots of representation. Even today, there's 3 species of sperm whale: the sperm whale, the pygmy sperm whale, and the dwarf sperm whale. Yeah, they're not real good at naming them. They're just named in order of size. I don't know which ones. I think the dwarf sperm whale is the smallest, and then the pygmy sperm whale, I have to check, though.
To be fair, we don't actually know much about this creature. In fact, the fossil of the animal found in 2008 only showed its head, nothing about the rest of the body. And so, most of what scientists know and theorize about this creature comes from a scan of that head.
We know it was pretty typical of sperm whale anatomy in a lot of ways, but it did have teeth in both the bottom and top jaw, which is not present in our modern species of sperm whale, who have a sockets in their top jaw instead of actual teeth. So it is thought that it was eating larger, bonier prey that it was having to tear flesh off of, as opposed to what sperm whales today eat, which is a lot of soft-bodied organisms. So they just have that bottom jaw with the teeth on it that just is the rake and suck kind of feeding style.
General consensus among scientists, though, is that the Leviathan had a length of about 44.3 feet, as well as a massive weight of up to 50 tons. The teeth of the largest one ever found reached around 16 inches in length, which is up to twice the size of a Tyrannosaurus rex. And given that the Leviathan and the Megalodon lived around the same time period, there's no doubt that they must have had their conflicts, especially when it came to competition for food. And it kind of makes you wonder...
All right, so the dwarf sperm whales that exist today don't exceed 14 feet. Or no, don't exceed 10 feet. And then the pygmy sperm whales don't exceed 15 feet. So they're both very small compared to the other sperm whale.
Who would have won the fight if things came to blows? I mean, sure, Megalodons were more aggressive and could even hunt in packs. To really
Says who? Sperm whales are super aggressive, especially the bulls. A bull sperm whale destroyed I should say destroyed a boat. Have destroyed multiple boats. Bull sperm whales are like, talk about dangerous wildlife. I don't think that there's any animal out there that in its environment could cause more damage to more people in a single strike than a sperm whale.
Moralize any prey. However, being the ancestors of whales, there's a sense that the Leviathan was smarter and had a more evolved intellect. And just like their descendants, the sperm whales, makes you wonder who would have won the fight if things came to blows. I mean, sure. However, being the ancestors of whales,
that's a whale shark, not ancestor of whales.
There's a sense that the Leviathan was smarter and had a more evolved intellect. And just like their descendants, the sperm whales, Leviathans are credited to have had some form of echolocation that they could use to communicate and hunt. Combine all of this with the fact that they were comparable in size to the Megalodon, and I think it's safe to say that we might have a massive battle on our hands.
And it's all other sperm whales that we know of live in pods. That's probably the bigger problem for Megalodon with whales, which for sharks with whales in general. Now there are sharks that live in schools, but these macro predatory sharks, the energies that they require would need them to live in more solitary lives. Except for the red megalodon, apparently, that lived in packs, but whatever the hell that is.
If those two had ever crossed paths. When the other animals ran out, they could have even hunted each other. But if I was really pressed to choose who I think would win, I might want to give the advantage to the Megalodon here. Something about that herd mentality just makes me think it would be almost impossible to knock them off their perch.
Well, again, whales actually live in pods, so...
To that effect, gray megalodons were mostly lazy and slow, and when they did eventually eat, it would mostly be... If I was really pressed to choose who I think would win, I might want to give the advantage to the Megalodon here. Something about that herd mentality just makes me think it would be almost impossible to knock them off their perch. To that effect, gray megalodon...
Okay, is there a part 3 too? Jesus, they divided this in, I guess there's a limit on how long a video can be, but... there we go.
The Zygophyseter. Speaking of the Leviathan, it would be pretty appropriate to mention its smaller and more aggressive cousin, the Zygophyseter viroli. The Zygophyseter was also seen by many scientists as a possible ancestor to the sperm whale, although some would believe that it might have been more closely related to the modern-day dolphin above anything else. This is primarily because, unlike the Leviathan, this creature only reached between 23 and 28 feet in length, which is not as large as the other two animals, but is still pretty much bigger than most of...
It's like an orca sized, right? A little bit smaller than an orca. Probably lived in pods. More maybe like a pilot whale sized. Why is this thing a threat to a megalodon? I mean, they would probably avoid it. And yes, there is paleo art of it attacking marine sloths, which is awesome. But
most of the scariest animals who are available under the surface of the sea today. With teeth that measured between 6 and 8 inches in length, it was also quite the menacing creature. Like the red megalodon, however, it was known to be aggressive and ruthless when it hunted.
The red megalodon was not known to be anything because there's no such thing as a red freaking megalodon.
Because it was not as large as the Leviathan, the animal had more work to do when it came to the hunting department. But with a bite force of almost 2,500 pounds per square inch, I doubt that would have been much of a problem. This creature's smaller size also meant that it could hunt much better, moving quickly through the water to catch its prey. And its use of echolocation meant that it could hide better from possible predators while also hunting their prey with increased accuracy and precision. It should also be noted that these animals did not do much in groups. The Zygophyseter was most likely a solo hunter, which meant that it had a lot more to do to work to get to its food. It's unclear whether they lived around the same time as the Megalodon or if they came a bit later after the latter had gone extinct, but still, considering that any fight between the Megalodon and the Leviathan would have been a stalemate, I'm not sure that the Megalodon would have had much issue dispatching one of these.
So,
then again, though, perhaps they had
where-
some ace in the hole that
where do you get that information about them being solitary? I just had to pull it up because I don't think that matches the paleobiology I'm familiar with for the species. I don't know if we have any records of any sperm whales that were solitary. I mean, the bulls are solitary. They live much like other artiodactyls, where the bulls go off and live by themselves. Is that what you mean? Just trying to get a bearing on this. What kind of paleoecology are you coming up with that makes you think? A zygophyte setter and a fully grown great white shark. Given the similar bite force between zygophyte setter and a fully grown great white shark, it is hypothesized that the cetacean occupied a similar ecological niche that primarily fed on local large fish such as marlin and wahoos, and small to medium-sized marine mammals such as seals, dugongs, and small cetaceans. However, neither stomach contents nor cut marks on the bones of prey species have been discovered, and thus its diet is speculative. Speculative.
we just don't know about. The Sarcosuchus. When you think of the craziest predators in the oceans today, one of the first animals that may come to your mind would be the crocodile. Known for their incredible bite force and ability to wrestle prey back into their domain, crocodiles are seen by many as part of the top of the food chain, as long as sea creatures are concerned. And so, it made me think, where did they actually come from? Well, just like the Leviathan, it was also an ancestor of the modern sperm whale. Crocodiles get their origin from the Sarcosuchus. Like the crocodile, the Sarcosuchus was not necessarily a full-on sea monster.
So Sarcosuchus was not an ancestor to modern crocodiles either. It was Phylodosauridae, which are sometimes called a Neosuchian marine. There are a lot of marine crocodiles in this group. They lived in marine and brackish environments. So, interesting creature. Sarcosuchus got big too, but I don't know if I would classify it as marine. Is it a live in marine environments? Was it found in marine deposits? Let's see, diet. It's like, because its jaws look like gharial, right? You know, the gharials, the long narrow jaws with the bulb at the end. They didn't look like crocodile jaws, so I don't see this guy being much of a challenge. It's the piscivore.
It usually inhabited freshwater bodies and only went deep into the water when it absolutely had to. Still, though, we can safely classify these as aquatic creatures nonetheless. And what a creature it was. The Sarcosuchus lived in the early Cretaceous period, which is said to have been
Sarcosuchus. Suchus, it means crocodile.
95 to 115 million years ago. It's known by many as the largest crocodile to have ever walked the earth, although it did mostly inhabit what is now South America and Africa. With a skull that measured close to 2 meters in length, it had a head that was about twice the size of any modern-era crocodile. The animal usually hit up to 30 feet in length, with up to 4 tons of raw muscle weight. However, unlike modern crocodiles that tend to stop growing when they hit a specific age, the Sarcosuchus did not necessarily have a limit on its growth.
So that's kind of a misconception about crocodilians in general, that any of them grow. Like it is indeterminate growth, but it's not never-ending growth and perpetual growth. There's environmental factors can come into play on growth, and at certain points there could even be some shrinkage that happens within an adult species once it gets to a certain size, depending on the resources available. So it's going to be quite subjective. Yeah, a crocodile in a drought season can shrink a couple inches.
These animals could continue growing as big as possible as long as they were in good condition and were getting a steady diet. According to scientists, the largest of these animals could have been as long as 40 feet, with up to 10 tons in weight. The Sarcosuchus had a long snout that covered about 75% of its entire skull's...
I'm sitting here listening to this guy say Sarcosuchus. You guys remember that. Remember that I did this for you.
Length, with an upper jaw much longer than its lower, creating an overbite that would expose some of its massive teeth. Now, while no one knows exactly how long these teeth were, we barely need to, the Sarcosuchus had about 35 of them on each side of its upper jaw, as well as 31 on every side of its lower jaw. Like its descendants, it had thick, scaly skin, its legs were short, and it boasted a long...
Well, when you talk about descendants of Sarcosuchus, right? You got me saying it. Sarcosuchus, damn it. These crocodilians have been around for a long time. This guy didn't come around till the Cretaceous, right? These guys did not enter the scene until the late Cretaceous, or let me see, Sarcosuchus. Okay, no, early Cretaceous. I'm sorry, I was wrong about that. It's early Cretaceous, but crocodilians during the Triassic, crocodilians kind of ruled the world for a long time. So it's weird to act like this guy was an innovator of any of these features and characteristics.
Long and muscular tail, which it used to move itself at high speeds when it was underwater. Another unique feature of the animal was its large, broad knob at the tip of its snout, known as the bulla. While experts have not come to a consensus...
That is not a unique feature. Gargoyles have that.
...about what the knob may have been used for, most believe that it would have helped it to get a better grip on its prey. Or perhaps even send out sound frequencies.
Modern
given how strong that most crocodiles are today, and how they can clench their jaws.
Show a crocodilian with a bola. Show a crocodilian with a bola, you coward.
It wouldn't be that difficult to imagine exactly how strong the Sarcosuchus would have been. And with well over 100 teeth, I would hate to imagine what it would have felt like once this animal caught the prey in its grip. And do you want to know something even crazier? The mouth of one of these beasts alone had a span of about 6 feet. That meant that one of them could...
All right, hold on. We're going to talk about bola for a second. Let me see. There we go. Crocodilian with Ebola. So it's not... And I'm not saying Ebola like the virus. This is Ebola on the end of the snout here, right? Found in gharials. This is what Sarcosuchus is thought to have had on the end of its snout. All right, continuing on.
Literally swallow an average-sized human being in a single bite. Based on its dentations and the shape of its snout, many experts have theorized that the creature mostly had a similar diet to that of the Nile crocodile. The animal would have probably had a very...
Well, Ebola is different. That's where the two ends where you can wrap people's legs up in it. Catwoman uses bolas.
Diet consisting of almost anything it could overpower and kill. This meant everything from large land animals to sea creatures were on the menu for the super croc. Scientists have theorized that, unlike the modern crocodile, this creature probably was not able to do the famous death roll, but considering its size and imposing nature, I really doubt that it would have needed to. The Zygophyseter. Speaking of the Leviathan, it would be pretty appropriate to mention its smaller and more...
Must be a part 4. Good grief, I didn't think this was going to be this long. I want to find out if there's any sources on their claims about... on their claims about this red megalodon. It's like 100 reasons or something like that. 100 megalodon. Something. Yeah, 100 megalodon teeth. No. Red megalodon. Red megalodon. Why did it delete that? I just want my part 4. There's one. There's part 4 right there.
Basilosaurus.
Here we
go.
The
Basilosaurus is an animal with a pretty interesting name. When its remains would first be discovered, it was actually named Basilosaurus, a name that translates to king lizard in Greek. However, while the suffix to its name might imply that the creature was a reptile, further research would confirm that it was actually a prehistoric whale. Still, though, the name stuck, and it's been like that for all these years.
Red megalodon is not a thing, so that's probably why no one's heard of it.
According to some experts, it lived between 39 and 45 million years ago. The animal was incredibly long, reaching between 44 and 66 feet in length. It's said that the creature possessed a body that looked like a cross between a snake and an eel. Besides its massive length, it also weighed about 10 tons, which made it one of the heaviest animals of the sea.
Yeah, well, there's the new Parasitus is a basilosaurid that's contesting the largest animal ever with the blue whale. It's not as long, but it's speculatively
to that effect,
heavier.
Gray megalodons were mostly lazy and slow, and when they did eventually eat, it would mostly
Did I go back or something?
Be animals that were very slow at evasion. Basilosaurus. The basilosaurs that measured about 24 inches. Most of the experts say that these limbs probably did more to help with mating than it did with moving, since the Basilosaurus was adept at swimming already. These animals were also known to have teeth, with scientists claiming that most of the fossils that were found show signs of wear. This meant that the animals most likely preferred to chew their food before swallowing it, and it's unclear how many teeth they actually had, although considering that they mostly fed on large and aquatic animals, it's fair to say that they possessed quite the number of those chompers. Some discoveries of ancient Basilosaurus skeletons have helped to provide some insight into their diet. For instance, one full skeleton found in Egypt came with other skeletons within its belly. These included those of large fish and indicated that even sharks and other prehistoric animals that ventured too close were known to be prey. Of course, considering their massive size, that's not much of a surprise now, is it? Unlike its descendants, the Basilosaurus could not boast echolocation, and despite its massive size, it actually had a pretty small brain.
And it lived in pretty warm waters, too, all things considered.
Scientists believe that this small brain meant that the animal was not really into the herd movement or group hunting. They did, however, have complex ear structures, although not all of that was useful, as it chose to live underwater, with marrow-filled vertebrae and bones.
Well, so having the proper ear, how do I want to put this? Ear formulation and all the chemistry and everything that comes into being an aquatic animal that goes on in the ear, because you have to give up and down, right? Like seals, there's no up and down for them when they're in the water. They're just as happy going any direction. And being able to do that, like we don't have the natural ability to do that. You're always going to know you're up and down. You do your present. The location of down is important to us because we descend from arboreal animals that lived in trees. So it's very important for our ancestors to know what direction was down, even if all of our other senses were completely shut down. We all know which way is down, because that's why when you spin and get dizzy, there's liquid in your ear that gets all mixed up, and your down starts to go whoa. The what's down starts to be a little bit shiftier. It's down this way, it's down that way. It's always still kind of downward, but it'll rock back and forth, spin. Yeah.
Bones. The Basilosaurus could actually stay near the surface of the water as it swam. And some scientists have even pointed to the fact that they had small legs as proof that they had evolved to come onto the land itself. Perhaps for some reason, they simply decided not to, and spent most of their time dwelling in the ocean instead. I guess we will never know. Dunkleosteus. Now, there may have been some...
We did. I so far, everything I've said they were going to mention, except for Mosasaur, has been mentioned. So, are we going to get Mosasaur in part 4?
Pretty fearsome fishes that tread the world's oceans. However, not many of them have been as physically formidable as the Dunkleosteus. The fish lived during the late Devonian period, which was said to be 382 to 358 million years ago, and it's said to have been especially notable for its armored-type skin, which allowed it to pretty much move along the water without fear of altercation.
Yeah,
with a frame that measured between 11 and 29 feet in length, the
at least they acknowledge the new length estimates. They still using the old one too, but at least they're acknowledging the 11-foot one, because that's the more reasonable estimate.
Dunkleosteus was the largest fish in that period, and despite the fact that the animal barely had any teeth, it did eat just about anything, including other fish. Its bite force was comparable to that of the Tyrannosaurus rex, so it was not a creature to be messed with. This animal also had an
The cool thing about placoderms is they didn't really have teeth. They had like a dental plates, right? Like a bony plate covered with keratin. I think it was keratin, right? It might have been dentin. It might have been covered with dentin, but anyway, they weren't teeth. It was just these big plates. It was like bolt cutters or two knives that chopped together. Scissors are a good comparison.
Interesting ace in the hole, that being its head. All around the head and jaws of this creature, you could find what looked like armored plates, and even though the animal was toothless, those plates acted kind of like artificial teeth that would help it to grab prey whenever it bit down. Another discovery about this creature was that the animal had an incredibly quick mouth. With the ability to open and close almost immediately, the Dunkleosteus's mouth formed something of a suction action. This would suck prey into it, giving them no chance of survival once that massive predator...
But also, with that, it has the implication that it probably was eating things that were significantly smaller than it and is not going to be fighting a megalodon. Dunkleosteus was probably not going to be fighting anything anywhere close to its size because of, it was large and slow and heavy. And yeah, the armor on its head is probably an atavism from much smaller ancestors.
Was on their trail. Combine this with the animal's tremendous bite force, and you find that it was a very formidable predator indeed. The Dunkleosteus could use its mouth to suck in its prey, then use the armored plates around its head and jaws to bite down. Now, according to scientists, it had very few predators and ate just about everything, from thick-shelled ammonites to other placoderms that had body armor themselves.
It was the biggest animal in its environment, right? So, yeah, of course it's not going to have very many predators, at least not as an adult.
And for a final doozy, consider this. In 2016, scientists discovered scrape and puncture marks on the armor of some of these specimens that indicated impact from even larger animals of the same species. This meant that there was a significant chance that these animals had fed on each other as well. An interesting fact is that the jaws of the animals usually changed as they grew. According to one study, a Dunkleosteus would see its jaw become more elongated as it grew older, while its anterior fang or cusp would also increase in size. This study concluded that it most likely had a different taste for food as it grew up. Juvenile ones would...
Again, this is what we talked about with the theropods and the sharks. They're going to fill different niches as they mature. The tiny little dunk is not going to eat the same thing as a big 14-foot
be
dunk.
More comfortable with soft-bodied prey like small fish and sharks, while the larger ones would be more in the mood for large armored prey like placoderms. Considering that they lived in different eras, I would actually love to have seen a matchup between the Dunkleosteus and the Megalodon, but I guess for now, we can only speculate.
You is a placoderm.
Considering just how many animals have come and gone, one could only imagine the secrets that the oceans may hold. Many of us have believed that the Megalodon was the craziest thing to come out of the ocean, but the fact may very well be false now. What do you think, though? Do you think that there are even more animals that we've yet to see? And could there be a kraken lurking somewhere beneath? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Basilosaurus.
So they didn't use they showed a lot of megalodons, but they didn't actually have megalodon listed. Curious. All right, so I have a couple of theories on where this red megalodon stuff comes from. Okay, first, my first theory is that it comes from viewing of this chart. Right? That someone viewing this chart would expect or would suspect that these are two different individuals, species classifications, or that these are supposed to be different stages, represent different stages of the shark's life. I don't think that this is the case, but potentially it could be because the coloration chosen for this graphic. Regardless of whether this graphic is the origin for the red gray megalodon, this image almost exclusively pops up anywhere, or sorry, I don't mean to say exclusively, almost universally pops up anywhere that red megalodon and gray megalodon are brought up. If you ask somebody what are the difference between red megalodon and gray megalodon, this is probably about as deep as that descriptor is going to go. They're just going to say, hey, this is the difference between the two. That's it. And maybe the terminology they use on this, the megalodon gray red represents the smallest estimate. Yeah, so, and then you get your whale shark and your great white, just to give you a comparison. So that's a theory from where red megalodon originated from. But this is also a theory because the serrated huge red megalodon tooth of Indonesia. So there are megalodon teeth that are preserved with a red hue to them. This uniquely colored megalodon tooth from West Java, Indonesia, where there are apparently man-eating trees, by the way. It has a rich red enamel coloration I haven't seen in many teeth from the locality. It's a beast at 5.86 inches long and very robust. It has sharp serration and excellent tip and minimal root erosion. So I wonder if this being called a red megalodon tooth because of the preservation or the way that was preserved in the fossil record gave it a red hue, because obviously not all megalodon teeth are red or have that red tint to them like you see on this one. Most of them are going to have a gray or black coloration to them. I've seen other red ones though, so those are my speculation. But my now the character of the red megalodon and the notion of red megalodon really took hold with these games, with the evolution games, which is fine. I like Ark and whatnot, but I think that the red megalodon found its way into pop culture via video games as being a state of development for the megalodon character when you choose to play with it. And they just went with red megalodon. Maybe they went with it based on this. Maybe they went with it based on this. But one way or the other, we've ended up with red megalodon making its way into pop culture and now being presented as a real animal that exists like in the fossil record, which just isn't true. So yeah, and that's why I wanted to cover this today, because red megalodon, come on now. All right, so that was Sci Fails. And you all know I love talking about sharks and crocs and everything in between, but I'm going to draw my line at red megalodon because there's no evidence for it whatsoever, making me think of the red xenomorph from Fire and Brimstone. Red megalodon equals Earth biological, gray megalodon alien shark. Yeah, it's like blood, like blood red, like life on Earth, and gray like alien. Mm-hmm. That's like my mom's level logic. She would look at that chart and think that's the red megalodon. Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people do. I think they look at that and I think a lot of these people making these videos are kids too, because it's AI voices. It doesn't have to be, so they can have an adult narrator, but it's a kid and a kid's understanding of the paleontology, right? But there's no such thing as a red megalodon. Sorry if that ruins anybody's fantasies about it. Were there megalodons that were smaller than the big ones? Absolutely. They grew. They filled lots of niches throughout their life. But I don't think that we need to call those other niches red megalodons, when we can just call them juvenile or subadult megalodons. All right. So please remember to be kind. Take care. And we'll see you next time.